In this short video, which is the third of 3 on converting cognitive science into classroom practice, I'll share with you my top 10 tips for planning opportunities for our students to apply prior learning in order to build its retrieval and storage strength. So we can do this in the following 10 ways. Top tip 1 is to repeat learning at least 3 times. So here we want to plan opportunities for students to repeat prior learning over and over. The more that students repeat their prior learning, the stronger the storage of that information becomes and the more efficient they become at retrieving that information from long-term memory and returning it to their working memory where they can use it. They can apply it fluently. Top tip 2 is to make students struggle in targeted ways. So what we want to do here is to plan for deliberate practice by making students struggle in certain targeted ways, slowing their initial learning down so that students stop and stumble, and so, crucially, must think harder in order to make sense of something. Moreover, we want to ensure that practice is targeted and mistake-focused. Top tip 3 is to space practice sessions out. In other words, we want to leave increasingly long gaps before returning to a topic so that students get to the point of almost forgetting what they have previously learned and must therefore think hard about that information again in order to retrieve it from their long-term memories. Top tip 4 is to interleave practice topics. So here, in addition to spacing practice, we want to focus on each topic for a shorter period of time, but return to it more often in between studying other connected topics. Now, as well as improving storage and retrieval strength, interleaving helps students to forge new connections between different aspects of a topic or between topics, and therefore it improves their ability to transfer learning from one context to another. Top tip 5 is to repeat learning in multiple contexts. So here, every time we return to prior learning, we want to get our students to do something different with it, not just repeat it verbatim or be assessed in the same way. For example, students could test themselves, test each other, devise quizzes, give presentations to the class, teach each other, produce an essay, draw a diagram, create a knowledge organizer, and so on. Top tip 6 is to set practice tests in order to boost learning. When students are tested, or indeed when they test themselves or each other, and correctly retrieve an answer from their long-term memories, that memory is further improved. But failure is also useful because it signals that the answer needs to be revisited and revised. Top tip 7 is to explicitly teach students how to take notes. Students' notes should be the result of analysis, evaluation, and synthesis. They should provide a thoughtful summarization of the key points covered in a lesson, not be verbatim transcriptions of what the teacher has said. Now, whilst taking notes, students should periodically pause to ask themselves questions such as, what are the key ideas here? What terms are new to me and what do they mean? How do the ideas being covered here connect to what I already know? Top tip 8 is to encourage students to test themselves on prior learning. Self-quizzing is about retrieving knowledge and skills from long-term memory, and it's far more effective than simply looking at your study notes over and over again. Top tip 9 is to plan for daily retrieval practice in the form of free recall. So here we might want to develop a habit whereby students spend 10 minutes at the end of every lesson filling a blank piece of paper with everything that they can remember from that lesson. And then we start the next lesson with a recap quiz. We may set a weekly homework whereby students create summary sheets for the previous week's learning. And finally, top tip 10 is to use knowledge organisers in order to capture key learning and to frame revision. Knowledge organisers can really help to focus students' attentions on the key concepts and on the vocab that they need to learn. The content of these organisers could be used to frame the daily recaps and the weekly quizzes that I mentioned a moment ago, as well as the end of topic tests. And those are my top 10 tips for applying prior knowledge. For more top tips on teaching, please visit bromleyeducation.co.uk. That's bromleyeducation.co.uk.